Hello everybody, welcome to the John Show. My name is John, this is my show. Pardon the hiatus, life happened and I had to take care of some things, so I had to step away to do that, but now I'm stepping back and we're going to step back in with a new series. This one's called Headcanon. I am what my teachers in grade school would have called a daydreamer. I tend to think about things that aren't necessary or important or even mildly relevant. You ever see a movie or a TV show and it's got a plot hole or two in there and you're like, well wait a minute, but why is that like that? Shouldn't those people been over there? Or didn't that lady already do that? Or, well, okay, my brain can't let those things lie. So when there is a plot hole, my brain fills it in and tries to connect things together, as is what's happening with this episode. We are going to figure out something, a mystery from horror movies going all the way back to the 80s. That's right, the last century. So today, we're going to answer the question, is Jason a Tulpa? Now, you're probably asking yourself, Jason who? Tulpa what? Here we go. Jason, as in Jason Voorhees, of Friday the 13th fame. And a Tulpa, well, that is a little bit more difficult to explain. I am going to read some notes I have here so that I stay on topic. A Tulpa is of Tibetan Buddhist origins, although it's later found in traditions of mysticism and paranormalists from the early 20th century. It is a being, usually human, brought into existence as either an ethereal or a physical being through spiritual practices and intense concentration. So what does that mean? Basically, a Tulpa is a creature built up by strong emotional concentration and maybe some magic that can either be like a ghost or it can be solid like a person, like a Jason. Jason Voorhees, just so we're all clear here and on the same page, is the killer from the Friday the 13th movie franchise. He lives in the woods around Camp Crystal Lake, which is in New Jersey, unless he's in New York, or space, or Earth 2. Maybe. Jason has a kill count of over 160 people across 11 movies, but there's 12 movies in the franchise. Those movies are Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th Part 2, Friday the 13th Part 3, or Friday the 13th Part 3D if you got to see it in 3D. Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. It's not. Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. It wasn't. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Friday the 13th, Part 9, Jason Goes to Hell. The Final Friday, Jason X, and the reboot in 2009, aptly titled Friday the 13th. Between Jason X and the reboot was Freddy vs. Jason, which is wildly underrated. Go see that movie. But in the first movie, the one that started the whole franchise, Jason was not the killer. For those that don't know, the killer in the first movie, spoiler alert for a 44-year-old movie, was Jason's mother, Pamela Voorhees. You see, Jason was a camper at Camp Crystal Lake in 1957, and he drowned in the lake. The first movie came out in 1980, and it's supposed to take place 23 years after the death of Jason. He wasn't a good swimmer, and those darn camp counselors were off having sex instead of watching him. He was also physically and maybe mentally handicapped, so he probably faced a lot of bullying. I mean, this was 1957, and he was, by Pamela's account, ignored by the staff because he was different. A year later, she would kill 2 counselors at the camp, and from what I can see, she got away with it. So, 2 points for Mom, I guess. But was that enough? Was that enough to extinguish the pain of a mother losing her son? Theosophy is a religious movement established in the late 1800s. It mixed occult teachings with Western esotericism and aspects of both Hinduism, and Buddhism. In the 1905 book Thought Forms by theosophist Annie Besant, she describes tulpas as coming in 3 varieties. 1, those in the form of the ones who create them, doubles or doppelgangers. 2, those in the forms of other people. 3, those in the form that represents qualities of the astral plane, like emotions. Of these 3, the second kind, those that are in the forms of objects or other people, these have the unfortunate downside that they may be ensouled by nature spirits or by the dead. In other words, this kind of tulpa can be possessed by a separate supernatural spirit or by the souls of those who haven't crossed over. So how is Jason a tulpa? Well, Mrs. Voorhees was unable to bear the death of Jason. Clearly, she went crazy. She killed 2 counselors just a year later. She prayed for Jason's return. She focused all of her energy into visualizing her son manifest before her eyes. Her little boy, just as she remembered. Her energies, and maybe a little magic, built a new son, a construct of her imagination, very real and very alive, a son that would never die. 23 years later, Steve Christie bought the camp with the intentions of reopening it. The bad memories came flooding back. But Jason was dead. That wasn't her son. But the tulpa was alive. Jason was alive. Her madness scared Jason and forced him to flee into the woods. Mrs. Voorhees lost her mind again. She was not going to let them reopen that camp. She went after the counselors. She would kill them all for Jason, and she did. One by one. But in the end, it was the counselor Alice, the final girl, that killed Mrs. Voorhees. Alice cut her head off on the shore of Crystal Lake, and Jason saw the whole thing from the edge of the woods. Afterwards, as Alice floated on a boat in the middle of the lake, Jason would attack her from the water, but he was too small, too weak. He was only 11 when he died after all. And the police arrived then, so he ran and he hid. Later he would recover his mommy's head and sweater, and went back into the woods. Here, young tulpa Jason, who's lost his own damn mind by now because he was brought back as mommy saw him, which was feeble-minded. He begins to hear his mommy speak to him through her severed head. Now maybe this was her soul, unable to rest, residing within her own tulpa son. Maybe it's some malevolent nature spirit, or maybe Jason was just made bad. She tells him to be a big boy now because she's not going to be able to protect him anymore, but she will be able to help in other ways. Jason then grows to adulthood instantly. He is a creature of imagination, and he has given himself the ability to do what he wants now that his mother is dead. He is no longer bound by her will, but his own. And he goes to seek revenge. He tracks down Alice and kills her. When he gets back to Camp Crystal Lake, the events play out just as they do. 5 years later, more camp counselors arrive, disturbing Jason's peace. Jason kills them all, but the final girl, Ginny, she hits him with a machete, like in the side of the neck. And that's where the movie ends. And where 3 picks right up. Part 3 takes place later the same day as Part 2. Jason is now hiding in a barn, killing anybody that gets too close. In Part 2, Jason had long hair and a beard. But now in Part 3, he's bald and much, much bigger. Jason, being a tulpa, explains why he's different from movie to movie. Because he can change his size and appearance at will to be stronger or scarier whenever he wants to. The final girl hits Jason in the head with an axe. And the coroner takes Jason away. Part 4 picks up right after the ending of Part 3. Jason gets back up at the morgue and kills his way back to Crystal Lake. And it ends with Jason being killed by Tommy Jarvis. But it's implied that the spirit of Jason has entered Tommy. But if that spirit was already, say, Pamela Voorhees, well, then that explains Part 5, The New Beginning, follows Tommy after he's released from an insane asylum to a halfway house. The acting is bad. It is so wooden. and the guy that plays Tommy is pretty stale the entire time, which could be explained as not bad acting, but Tommy being possessed by Pamela Voorhees. Jason is killing people, but wasn't the last movie the final chapter? So is it Tommy? Is Jason really back? Nope. It's some other dude pretending to be Jason to commit some murders. But the movie again ends with the idea that Tommy may be possessed. Part 6 starts with Tommy Jarvis and, of all people, Arnold Horshack digging up the grave of Jason so they can, I don't know, make sure he's dead? Tommy has a right freak out and stabs Jason's corpse with a big metal spike, as you do, and lightning strikes the spike, reviving Jason. Or maybe the lightning was Pamela's soul going back into Jason, or the nature spirit, or the magic, whatever. Jason lives. Jason makes a beeline back to Crystal Lake, begins killing the new counselors at the new camp until Tommy chains a boulder around his neck and drops him into the lake. At this point in the series, Jason is basically a demigod, able to withstand bullets, knives, punches and kicks, toxic sludge, magical daggers, being cryogenically frozen, surviving several execution attempts by the United States federal government. He even survives the vacuum of space and probably re-entry through the atmosphere of Earth too. Maybe. This also explains how in Freddy vs. Jason, Freddy in Hell is able to influence Jason on Earth. Freddy is a dream demon, i.e. a nature spirit. See Wes Craven's New Nightmare for full details. Though weak at first, Freddy is able to ensoul Jason to do his bidding until Freddy can build his powers back up again. It really is an underrated film. Please go watch Freddy vs. Jason. And that's it. Jason cannot die because Jason is a tulpa, a construct built of love and grief and imagination and maybe a little magic. Mrs. Voorhees created him to be her precious little boy forever. Forever. This is why Jason cannot die. He just rests until mommy tells him it's time to kill again. Thank you very much for joining me on this inaugural episode of Head Canon. Hopefully, there will be more of these. My plan is to not stay away as long as I did, though I do not know if at this point I can guarantee a regular upload schedule like I was able to do with the Morrowind episodes. Unfortunately, I am not a tech-savvy person in an increasingly tech world. Yeah, I'm not tech-savvy. This is a tech world, and I feel like sometimes I'm just rubbing two sticks together in front of my Mac, hoping things happen. So we'll see. There should be more. I got at least 3 or 4 more ideas for headcanon stuff, and I got some plans, but I don't know how I'm going to do them right now. So there will be a slow trickle of uploads until I can figure out a few things and make it happen. But I appreciate all those that stuck around and still subscribe to me, and hopefully 2024 will be a bigger and better year, and none of us will die from World War III. So thank you for watching The John Show. Have a good evening, and take care now.